Rain painted silver streaks across the windows of the Wellington Room, one of Chicago's oldest steakhouses. Inside, warm amber chandeliers reflected against polished crystal glasses and dark mahogany walls. The restaurant was full. Business executives celebrated promotions. A young couple quietly celebrated an anniversary. An elderly man sat alone near the fireplace, reading a worn hardcover novel while waiting for his meal. And weaving effortlessly between every table was Megan Foster. She carried 3 plates balanced perfectly on one arm. Prime rib, roasted salmon, truffle mashed potatoes. Someone called her name from across the room. Megan. She turned with a bright smile. Coming. At 30 years old, Megan had heard every cruel joke people could invent about her size. She had learned long ago that confidence wasn't something people gave you. It was something you built yourself. One shift. One difficult customer. One ordinary day at a time. She placed another order on table 12. The elderly customer looked up from his book. You never forget anyone's order. She laughed. I forget my own grocery list, but never yours. He smiled. That's a gift. It's survival. He chuckled. I hope whoever marries you appreciates that. She winked. They'll have to find me first. Across the restaurant, another customer quietly watched the exchange. Black tailored jacket, white dress shirt, no tie, dark hair brushed neatly back. Late 30s. He looked less like a businessman than someone who had learned to observe before speaking. He hadn't touched the expensive steak cooling in front of him. Instead, he watched exits, windows, reflections, people. His coffee had gone cold. Megan approached with the check. Excuse me. He looked up. His eyes were calm, alert. I'm sorry your dinner's getting cold. It isn't why I'm here. She smiled politely. Business meeting? No. You waiting for someone? A slight pause. I'm hoping they don't arrive. She frowned. That's mysterious. The corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. My name's Megan. I know. Her smile faded. You do? You introduced yourself to every table tonight. She blinked. Fair enough. He hadn't been flirting. He'd simply been paying attention. She nodded toward his untouched plate. You should eat while it's hot. I will. You keep saying that? I know. She walked away, shaking her head. Some people were impossible to figure out. Outside, a black SUV rolled slowly past the restaurant. Then another. Inside the second vehicle, a man lowered binoculars. He's still inside. A voice answered through an earpiece. Confirm the waitress. The same one. Wait for my signal. Back inside, the restaurant pianist began playing softly. Rain tapped gently against the windows. For one brief moment, everything felt peaceful. Then the front doors burst open. 3 masked men stormed inside. One carried a shotgun. Another held a handgun. The third slammed the entrance shut. Nobody move. Screams filled the room. Wine glasses shattered. The pianist froze mid-note. Customers ducked beneath tables. Megan instinctively stepped between the nearest frightened child and the armed men. Her heart hammered, but her feet refused to move. The man with the shotgun pointed toward the dining room. Phones, wallets, jewelry. Now. Nobody argued. The elderly customer near the fireplace struggled to stand. His cane slipped. He collapsed. One robber cursed. I said move. He raised his weapon. Before anyone could react, a chair slid across the polished floor. Every head turned. The quiet customer in the black jacket had stood. He looked almost annoyed, not frightened, just disappointed. One robber barked. Sit down. The stranger didn't. Instead, he spoke calmly. There's a little girl behind that table. The gunman frowned. So lower your weapon. Silence. The robber laughed. You giving me orders? No. The stranger's voice never changed. I'm giving you a chance. The room held its breath. Megan stared. What was he doing? Nobody talked to armed criminals like that. The leader lifted his shotgun. You got 5 seconds. The stranger slowly removed his watch, placed it on the table, then his wedding band, then his wallet. I don't care about any of this. The robber smirked. Good. But the stranger looked toward the child still hiding behind Megan. I care about them. Everything happened at once. The lights exploded. A serving tray flew through the air. Someone shouted. A deafening crash echoed across the restaurant. Megan barely understood what she was seeing. The stranger moved with impossible speed. He knocked the shotgun aside. Another attacker stumbled into an overturned table. Customers screamed. Chairs splintered. The chandelier swung wildly overhead. Megan pulled the frightened child beneath a heavy oak booth just as another crash shook the room. She heard fists, breaking glass, a body hitting the floor. Someone yelled for security. Then, silence. When she finally looked up, the restaurant had become a battlefield. Tables lay overturned. Plates covered the floor. The three attackers were unconscious. The mysterious stranger stood in the center of the room, breathing heavily. His shirt sleeve had torn during the struggle. A cut above his eyebrow trickled down the side of his face. He looked toward Megan immediately, not toward the police sirens, not toward the defeated attackers. Toward her. Is anyone hurt? She blinked. You're asking me? You're closest. She looked around. The little girl clung to her mother. The elderly man was sitting up again. Several customers cried, but everyone was alive. She answered quietly, I think everyone made it. Only then did the stranger finally relax. Minutes later, police officers flooded the restaurant. Paramedics examined customers. Detectives interviewed witnesses. Everyone pointed toward the same man. He saved us. He stopped all three. He protected everyone. One officer approached him. Sir, we're going to need a statement. The stranger nodded politely. Of course. As he passed Megan, several customers applauded. Someone even whispered, He's a hero. Megan looked at him, then down at the broken restaurant surrounding them. Broken windows, injured people, children crying, destroyed lives that would remember this night forever. When he stopped beside her, he spoke softly. I'm glad you're safe. She held his gaze, then quietly answered, I'm not thanking you. For the first time that evening, his composure cracked. Not because she was rude, because no one had ever answered him like that. He studied her for several long seconds. May I ask why? Her voice remained steady. You protected us. Yes, and I'm grateful we're alive. A pause. But if violence is always the answer, someone else will come tomorrow. He didn't interrupt. She continued, I don't want heroes. I want a world that doesn't need them. Silence settled between them. Police radios crackled in the background. Rain continued falling beyond the shattered entrance. Finally, the stranger nodded once. My name is Luca. Megan. I know. She sighed. That sounds less charming the second time. To her surprise, he almost smiled. Almost. Then he was gone, escorted outside by detectives, leaving behind nothing except unanswered questions. Across the street, a man inside a parked sedan lowered his camera. He had photographed everything, especially the moment Luca stepped between Megan and the gunman. He made one phone call. It started. A voice answered. And the waitress? The photographer glanced through the rain-soaked windshield toward Megan. She challenged him. A long silence followed. Then came the reply. Keep watching her. The call ended. Inside the ruined restaurant, Megan picked up Luca's watch from beneath a broken chair. He had forgotten it in the chaos. She turned it over in her hand. Engraved on the back were just 5 words. For every life worth saving. She didn't know it yet, but returning that watch would become the beginning of the most dangerous chapter of her life. The rain had stopped by dawn. Only puddles remained outside the Wellington room, reflecting the pale Chicago sunrise against shattered windows and flashing police lights. Inside, the restaurant no longer smelled of garlic butter and grilled steak. It smelled of wet wood, broken glass, fresh paint from temporary plywood boards, and silence. Megan Foster stood alone near the hostess stand with a broom in her hands. The dining room looked nothing like the place she'd worked for nearly 8 years. The grand chandelier hung crooked above the center aisle. Half the tables had been pushed against one wall. The piano had been covered with a white sheet to protect it from dust. She swept carefully around shattered crystal. Not because management asked her to, because she couldn't bear seeing the restaurant left broken. Her manager, Frank Dawson, walked over carrying 2 paper coffee cups. "You should have taken today off." She accepted one. "I didn't know what I'd do at home." "You almost died." "I know." "You don't seem angry." Megan looked around the empty dining room. "I am, but not at the people you think." Frank frowned. "Everyone keeps calling that guy a hero." She nodded. "They're not wrong. So why were you so hard on him?" She stared at the cracked front doors. "Because everyone keeps talking about what happened after the violence. No one asks why it happened at all." Fang Saihu, "You think too much." She smiled faintly. Occupational hazard. Across town, Luca Moretti stood inside a sleek conference room overlooking Lake Michigan. The walls were covered with digital security maps, live camera feeds, satellite image. His company, Sentinel Global Security, occupied the entire top floor. It looked less like a corporate headquarters and more like a command center. A woman entered carrying a tablet. "Morning." Luca looked up. Eleanor. Former FBI Special Agent Eleanor Harper had spent 20 years chasing organized crime before retiring to work as Sentinel's chief intelligence officer. She placed the tablet on the table. "Every news channel is calling you the mystery hero. I was hoping they wouldn't." She smiled. "You always hope for impossible things." He didn't answer. Instead, he replayed security footage from the restaurant. Not the robbery, not the fight. Only one moment. Megan standing between a frightened little girl and an armed man. She had stepped forward before anyone else moved. Unarmed, terrified, still unwilling to abandon someone weaker than herself. Eleanor noticed. "You've watched that clip 12 times. I know. What are you looking for?" He answered quietly. "Courage." Eleanor folded her arms. "Or her." Silence. Then, "She challenged you." "Yes. Nobody does that." "I know. What are you going to do?" Luca closed the screen. "Return to work." She laughed softly. "I've known you 15 years. When you say that, it usually means the exact opposite." Meanwhile, Megan unlocked the restaurant's side entrance. The insurance company had already begun repairs. Contractors measured damaged walls. Electricians checked wiring. The familiar rhythm of rebuilding had begun. She walked toward the kitchen. Someone cleared his throat behind her. She turned. Luca stood quietly in the doorway. No security team. No expensive suit. Just dark jeans, a navy jacket, and the same calm expression. He held out a small paper bag. "I came for my watch." Megan blinked. "I was actually looking for you." She reached into her apron pocket. The engraved watch rested safely inside. She handed it to him. "I almost kept it." He raised an eyebrow. "As evidence? As motivation?" He looked confused. She smiled. "To remind myself that mysterious strangers actually exist." For the first time, he smiled. A real one. Brief, but genuine. She noticed immediately. "There." "What?" "You smile. Occasionally. I thought maybe your face couldn't." He slipped the watch into his pocket. "I've heard that before." An awkward silence settled between them. Finally, Megan crossed her arms. "I still haven't changed my mind. I know. I appreciate what you did. But," she looked directly into his eyes, "you fought because you had no other choice." He nodded. "Correct. But people like you always think violence solves problems." He considered her words carefully. "It solves some. It creates others." Another pause. "You could be right." She looked surprised. "I wasn't expecting you to admit that. I've spent years wishing there had been another way." His answer felt heavier than the words themselves. Before she could ask what he meant, the restaurant television switched on. Breaking news. The reporter stood outside another crime scene several miles away. Authorities are investigating an overnight warehouse fire connected to an ongoing financial corruption investigation. Luca's attention sharpened instantly. The report continued. Officials confirmed thousands of business records may have been destroyed. His phone vibrated. One message. They found the archive first. His expression changed. Megan noticed. Bad news? He slipped the phone away. Someone erased evidence. You sound disappointed. I am. You were investigating it? In a way, she studied him carefully. You don't talk like a businessman. What do I sound like? Someone carrying too many ghosts? For several seconds, he didn't respond. Because she wasn't wrong. That afternoon, the restaurant finally reopened for limited service. Only half the dining room remained usable. Customers whispered about the robbery. Many recognized Megan from the news interviews. Several thanked her for protecting the child. She accepted every compliment politely, then returned to work. Near sunset, the elderly customer from the previous evening returned. Same table, same book, same gentle smile. You came back? He nodded. I promised myself I'd finish my dinner. She laughed. I'll make sure nobody interrupts this time. As she poured his coffee, she noticed something strange. A folded envelope tucked beneath his menu. He hadn't placed it there. She picked it up. No name, no stamp. Only one sentence written across the front. Give the watch back before sunset. Her smile disappeared. She looked around the dining room. Nobody seemed unusual. The old man frowned. Everything all right? She slowly slipped the envelope into her apron. I don't know. Outside, a black sedan pulled away from the curb. Inside, a photographer adjusted a long camera lens. He had watched the exchange through the restaurant window. He pressed a button on his phone. She received the message. A voice answered. And Luca? Not here. Good. We'll let her make the next move. Closing time arrived. The last customers left. Megan locked the front door. The mysterious envelope still rested in her apron pocket. She finally opened it. Inside, another handwritten note. He isn't the only one watching you. Before she could react, the restaurant lights flickered. Once, twice. Then every light went dark. Only the emergency exit signs glowed red across the silent dining room. A cold breeze drifted through the broken front windows. Megan's heartbeat quickened. Megan. A familiar voice echoed from the darkness. Luca. She turned. He stood just inside the entrance. Rainwater glistened on his jacket. His breathing was heavier than before, as if he'd been running. What happened? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the note still trembling in her hand. They've contacted you. Her voice became barely audible. Who? He stepped closer. Whoever planned last night's robbery. She stared. You mean, it wasn't random? The words seemed impossible, but everyone said they wanted something. What? He looked directly into her eyes. I think they wanted to find you. The restaurant fell silent once more. Outside, a black SUV slowly rolled past the shattered windows. Neither of them noticed. Someone inside was taking photographs, waiting, watching, and smiling. The black SUV disappeared into the rain before Megan reached the shattered front window. Only its taillights remained for a moment. Then they vanished into Chicago's evening traffic. She turned back toward Luca. You said they were looking for me. His eyes remained fixed on the empty street. I said I think they were. That's not much better. No, it isn't. The emergency lights cast long red shadows across the ruined restaurant. Neither of them spoke. Somewhere in the kitchen, a loose pan shifted with a metallic clatter. Megan startled. Luca instinctively stepped in front of her. She noticed immediately. You do that without thinking. What? You always put yourself between me and the danger. He looked down, almost surprised by his own position. I suppose I do. Police officers arrived within minutes. The anonymous notes were carefully sealed in evidence bags. A detective asked the same questions over and over. Had Megan recognized anyone? Had anyone followed her recently? Had she noticed unusual customers before the robbery? Every answer was the same. No. When the interview finally ended, the detective sighed. If anything changes, call us. Megan nodded. She watched the police cars disappear. The street grew quiet again. Too quiet. You shouldn't go home tonight. Luca's voice was calm. She crossed her arms. You barely know me. I know enough. You think someone will break into my apartment? I think someone wants answers. I don't have any. They may not believe that. Megan looked toward the dark skyline. I've spent 30 years living a very ordinary life. Luca answered softly. Ordinary lives change without asking permission. She refused his offer. Politely. Firmly. I appreciate your concern, but I'm not hiding. I'm asking you to be careful. I always am. He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket. This isn't a tracking device. She looked suspicious. It sounds exactly like something a tracking device would be. For the first time that day, he laughed. It was quiet, brief, but real. It's an emergency phone. She examined the slim black device. No contacts? Only one. Yours. Press the button if you're in danger. She looked at him. I hope I never need it. So do I. An hour later, Megan climbed the narrow stairs to her apartment above a neighborhood bakery. The building was old. The hallway lights flickered. Someone downstairs was baking fresh bread despite the late hour. Normally, the smell comforted her. Tonight, it made the silence feel even stranger. She unlocked her apartment. Everything looked normal. The couch, the bookshelves, the framed photographs of her parents. She slowly exhaled. Maybe Luca had been wrong. Then she noticed it. The kitchen window, it was open. She was certain she had locked it that morning. Her heartbeat quickened. Megan? A voice called from downstairs. Mrs. Alvarez, the elderly woman who owned the bakery. You home? Megan hurried back into the hallway. Yes. Mrs. Alvarez smiled. A delivery came for you. I left it inside. What delivery? I don't know. There wasn't a return address. Megan's stomach tightened. She slowly returned to her apartment. A small wooden box sat neatly in the middle of her kitchen table. No ribbon, no label, only her name. She didn't touch it. Instead, she pressed the single button on Luca's emergency phone. Less than 12 minutes later, a black SUV stopped outside the bakery. Luca stepped out before the vehicle had fully stopped. Not running, not panicking, just moving with quiet purpose. He entered the apartment. His eyes swept every room. The windows, the fire escape, the ceiling. Finally, he looked at the box. You didn't open it. You told me to call first. A faint look of relief crossed his face. Thank you. He carefully examined the package. No wires, no ticking, no obvious danger. Only then did he lift the lid. Inside rested a single photograph. Megan frowned. It showed the Wellington room, taken several days before the robbery. Employees moved between tables. Customers laughed. Everything looked ordinary. Until she noticed herself. Someone had circled her with black ink. Across the bottom of the photograph were 6 handwritten words. She doesn't remember what she saw. Silence filled the apartment. Megan looked up. What does that mean? Luca didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at the photograph, as though he had seen handwriting like this before. What? She stepped closer. You recognize it. I wish I didn't. He turned the photo over. On the back, a tiny embossed symbol. A chess knight. His expression darkened. Eleanor was right. Eleanor? My intelligence director. You showed her this? I showed her something similar years ago. Megan's voice became barely audible. Who sends these? The same people who erased evidence from the warehouse. She sat heavily on the edge of the couch. I don't understand. I wasn't involved in anything. You don't have to be. Then why me? Luca looked toward the rain-covered window. Sometimes witnesses don't realize they're witnesses. That night, neither of them slept. Instead, they spread the photograph across Megan's dining table. Magnifying glass. Notebook. Old restaurant floor plans. Luca studied every reflection captured in the image, then suddenly stopped. Zoom in. Megan enlarged the digital scan. The reflection in a polished wine bucket sharpened. A man stood near the entrance, face partially hidden beneath a baseball cap, watching the dining room. Watching, not the customers, not the cash register. Watching Megan. The photograph had been taken 3 days before the robbery. Someone had been following her long before violence entered the restaurant. A quiet knock echoed downstairs. 3 slow taps. Mrs. Alvarez's voice drifted upward. Megan? She opened the apartment door. The elderly baker looked worried. Honey, there was a man asking about you. Megan's smile disappeared. What did he look like? Gray coat. Expensive car. Very polite. What did he want? Mrs. Alvarez hesitated. He asked if you still wore your grandmother's necklace. Megan instinctively touched the silver pendant resting beneath her blouse. She froze. Very few people even knew she owned it. Luca noticed immediately. The necklace. What about it? Who gave it to you? My grandmother. When? The day before she passed away. He looked at the pendant. May I see it? She unclasped it carefully. It was simple. Silver. Oval. Nothing unusual. Until Luca turned it over. Tiny engraved initials appeared beneath years of wear. E.M. Megan frowned. My grandmother's name wasn't Isabella. Luca's pulse quickened. My mother's was... The apartment fell completely silent. Neither of them spoke. The tiny necklace resting in Luca's palm suddenly connected 2 families, who should never have known each other. Outside, across the street, a lone photographer lowered his camera. He smiled to himself. They had finally found the necklace, exactly as planned. The silver pendant rested in Luca's open hand. Neither of them moved. The tiny initials engraved into the back caught the soft glow of Megan's kitchen light. E.M. Luca traced the worn letters with his thumb. They're real. Megan searched his face. You know this necklace. I know who wore it. He looked up slowly. My mother. Silence settled over the apartment. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows while the city continued without them. Inside, everything had changed. Megan finally found her voice. That can't be possible. I wish you were right. My grandmother never mentioned your family. Neither did my mother. He carefully handed the pendant back. When did your grandmother give it to you? The night before she died. What did she say? Megan closed her eyes, reaching for a memory she hadn't visited in years. She was 17 again. Her grandmother sat beside a hospital window, weak but smiling. She had pressed the necklace into Megan's palm. One day, she had whispered, someone will recognize this. When they do, listen before you judge. At the time, Megan thought it was nothing more than the confused words of an elderly woman saying goodbye. Now, they sounded like instructions. Luca remained quiet. There's something else. She looked at him. My mother owned 2 identical lockets. One disappeared shortly before she died. Megan frowned. You think my grandmother had the other one? I think... He hesitated. Our families knew each other. A sharp knock interrupted them. 3 rapid knocks. Then another. Luca's head turned instantly toward the apartment door. He raised one finger. Stay quiet. The room fell still. Another knock echoed through the hallway. Megan? It was Mrs. Alvarez. Her voice trembled. Honey, there are 2 people downstairs asking questions. Luca opened the door only a few inches. Mrs. Alvarez looked relieved to see another adult. They showed me photographs. What kind? They wanted to know if Megan still lived here. Did you tell them? The elderly woman shook her head. I told them I couldn't remember. A faint smile crossed Luca's face. Thank you, she whispered. They're still outside. Luca stepped toward the window. Across the street, a dark sedan remained parked beneath a street lamp. Its headlights were off. 2 figures sat inside, watching, waiting. Megan joined him. They've been there since yesterday. You noticed? I thought they belonged to someone visiting the bakery. They're conducting surveillance. She sighed. I miss the days when I worried about late rent. Luca turned away from the window. You can't stay here. She folded her arms. You've said that before. I'm saying it differently now. How? They know where you live. She didn't argue, because this time, she knew he was right. Within 20 minutes, a discreet SUV waited behind the bakery. No flashing lights, no security logos, just another vehicle blending into the sleeping city. Before Megan climbed inside, she looked back at the apartment she'd called home for nearly a decade. The lights were still on. Her favorite books remained on the shelf. A coffee mug still rested in the sink. Everything looked painfully normal, yet she had no idea when or if she would return. They drove north along Lakeshore Drive. The city lights reflected across the dark water of Lake Michigan. Neither of them spoke for several miles. Finally, Megan broke the silence. You carry guilt like other people carry luggage. He looked out the window. I've had more practice. You blame yourself for things you didn't do. I blame myself for things I couldn't stop. She nodded slowly. That's different. He glanced toward her. No, it isn't. An hour later, the SUV disappeared through the gates of an old estate hidden among towering oak trees. Unlike Luca's sleek corporate headquarters, this property felt timeless. Stone walls, iron lanterns, ancien gardien, no signs, no luxury for the sake of appearance, only quiet. This is where you live? No. Then whose house is it? My aunt's. Sophia Moretti opened the front door before they reached it. She looked to be in her early 60s. Silver hair, warm brown eyes, an apron dusted with flour. She smiled the moment she saw Luca. You finally came. Then her attention shifted to Megan. So, you're the young woman. Megan blinked. You know about me? Sophia smiled gently. I know my nephew only visits when something truly matters. Luca Saihe, I was hoping to avoid this conversation. You've never succeeded before. The house smelled of fresh bread and rosemary. Unlike the cold elegance of luxury penthouses, this place felt lived in. Family photographs lined the walls. Old cookbooks filled wooden shelves. Sophia poured tea without asking what anyone wanted. You look exhausted, she said to Megan. I feel exhausted. Good. That means you're honest. Megan laughed despite herself. Sophia noticed the necklace immediately. Her smile disappeared. Where did you get that? Megan slowly unclasped it. My grandmother. Sophia took one trembling breath. I haven't seen this in 25 years. Luca looked up sharply. You recognize it. I gave it away. The room fell silent. Sophia carefully opened the pendant. Inside, hidden beneath the tiny photograph compartment, was a folded piece of yellowed paper no one had ever noticed. Megan stared. I didn't know it opened. Very few people did. Sophia unfolded the fragile paper with remarkable care. Not a letter. A map, drawn by hand, with one location circled in red. Beneath it, only 4 handwritten words. When hope seems impossible. Luca leaned closer. I've seen this handwriting. So have I, Sophia whispered. It's Isabella's. Megan looked between them. My grandmother kept this hidden all these years. Sophia nodded. Because she promised your mother. My mother? Sophia smiled sadly. No, his. She looked toward Luca. Your mother trusted someone outside the family. Megan's heartbeat quickened. My grandmother? Yes. They were friends. Luca lowered his eyes. My mother never told me. Sophia answered softly. She couldn't. Too many people were listening. Before anyone could study the map further, a shrill alarm echoed through the house. One sharp tone, then another. Luca was already moving. What is it? A security monitor near the hallway lit up. The front gate camera filled the screen. 3 black SUVs had stopped outside the estate. No one stepped out. They simply waited, watching the house, watching whoever was inside. Sophia whispered, They found us. Luca's expression hardened. No, they followed us. Megan looked at the folded map in her trembling hands. The necklace, the hidden message, the connection between her grandmother and Isabella. Nothing about her life had been ordinary after all. And somewhere beyond the iron gates, someone else had just realized the same thing. The security monitor flickered beneath the soft glow of the hallway lamp. 3 black SUVs remained motionless beyond the iron gates. Their headlights stayed off. Their engines idled quietly in the darkness. No one stepped out. No one knocked. They simply waited. Watching, Sophia Moretti lowered her teacup with trembling hands. They're patient. Luca never took his eyes off the monitor. They're confident. Megan looked between them. What's the difference? Sophia answered first. Patient people wait for mistakes. Luca's voice was quieter. Confident people believe you've already made one. The estate fell into complete silence. Outside, wind stirred the old oak trees surrounding the property. The lanterns along the stone pathway swayed gently. Everything looked peaceful. Too peaceful, Megan folded Isabella's map carefully and slipped it back inside the pendant. Her fingers trembled. Only a few days earlier, she had worried about late deliveries, difficult customers, and whether the dinner rush would end before midnight. Now, complete strangers were surrounding an old estate because of a necklace she had worn since childhood. Sophia walked toward an antique bookshelf. She removed a faded family photo from its frame. Behind it, a hidden safe. Megan raised an eyebrow. You've done that before. Sophia smiled faintly. Old houses remember old habits. Inside the safe were several weathered journals, bundles of handwritten letters, a leather document case. Luca frowned. I thought you destroyed these. I told everyone I did. She handed him the document case. I've been waiting for the right moment. Luca slowly opened it. Inside rested dozens of photographs. Not of criminals. Not of weapons. Of ordinary people. Teachers. Shop owners. Doctors. Restaurant workers. Families gathered around dinner tables. Megan looked confused. What are these? Sophia sat quietly. Your mother collected them. Luca looked up. Why? Because she believed every investigation should begin by remembering who needed protecting. He turned another photograph. A neighborhood bakery. Another. A children's music recital. Another. The Wellington Room. Megan froze. There she was, serving coffee, laughing with an elderly customer. The photograph had been taken years before the robbery, long before anyone knew her name. May God. She barely whispered the words. They were watching me? Sophia shook her head. No. Luca continued studying the photographs. They were documenting innocent lives. Megan looked at him. Why? His answer came slowly. My mother wanted evidence that ordinary people always paid the highest price for powerful people's decisions. The room grew quiet again. Megan gently placed the photograph back into the case. For the first time, she understood why Isabella had refused to let hatred define her final years. A soft chime echoed through the hallway. One of the exterior cameras had detected movement. Luca tapped the monitor. The front gate remained closed, but one SUV had disappeared. Where did it go? Eleanor Harper's voice suddenly came through Luca's secure phone. I've been trying to reach you. His expression sharpened. Eleanor, we intercepted radio traffic. What kind? They're not planning an assault. Megan frowned. Then why are they here? Eleanor answered. They're creating pressure. Silence followed. Then, they want you to leave. Luca understood immediately. If we run, they'll follow. And eventually, Eleanor continued, they'll lead us exactly where they want. Sophia sighed. Then we don't move. Eleanor paused. Actually, I think Megan should. Everyone looked at the phone. What? Eleanor's voice remained calm. They're watching Luca. They're watching this estate. They're expecting obvious decisions. Another pause. They aren't expecting Megan. An hour later, the kitchen smelled of fresh bread. Sophia insisted everyone eat before making another decision. No one thinks clearly on an empty stomach. Megan couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken with such simple certainty. Sophia placed a bowl of homemade soup in front of her. My sister made this recipe famous. Megan smiled. Your sister? Sophia nodded. Isabella. The warmth of the soup seemed to soften something inside the room. For a few precious minutes, no one spoke about surveillance, or conspiracies, or danger. They simply shared dinner. Afterward, Megan wandered into the estate's small library. Large windows overlooked the moonlit garden. An old piano rested beneath the staircase. She traced her fingers along its polished wood. It still works. Luca's voice came from behind her. She looked back. I didn't hear you. I wasn't trying to. He stood several feet away, close enough to speak quietly, far enough to respect her space. She appreciated that. My grandmother used to play. Megan rested one hand on the piano. When I was little, she'd make me sing while she played. Luca smiled faintly. My mother couldn't play. No? No. But she always sang while cooking. The silence between them felt different now. Not uncomfortable. Gentle. Almost peaceful. Megan finally looked at him. Can I ask you something? You already are. She laughed softly. Fair point. She hesitated. After the restaurant, when everyone called you a hero, were you disappointed that I didn't? He considered the question, then slowly shook his head. No. Really? You were the first person who asked whether the violence could have been prevented. She searched his face. I thought you'd be angry. I was. She blinked. You were? Not with you. With myself? He looked toward the dark gardens outside. I've spent years learning how to stop dangerous people. His voice remained steady. But I've never stopped wondering why someone always has to get hurt first. Megan felt something shift. Not because of his words. Because he wasn't defending himself. He was questioning himself. For the first time, she saw the weight he carried. Not as strength, as grief. Before either of them spoke again, the estate lights flickered. Once, twice. Then every exterior security monitor suddenly went black. Luca reached instinctively for his phone. No signal. Sophia hurried into the library. The cameras are down. Eleanor's voice returned through the emergency radio. They've cut every external connection. Stay inside. Luca looked toward the front windows. No, they're trying to blind us. At that exact moment, a single envelope slid beneath the front door. No footsteps, no knocking, only the whisper of paper across polished wood. Megan slowly picked it up. On the front, only 4 handwritten words. She remembers now. Inside was another photograph. This one showed Megan as a little girl, standing beside her grandmother. In the background, almost hidden beneath the branches of a large oak tree, stood Isabella Moretti, smiling, watching them both. The room fell completely silent. The two women had known each other far longer than anyone had imagined. And somewhere beyond the gates, someone knew that Megan was finally beginning to remember the truth.